Mr. Cassidy now for your presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dave Cassidy. I'm the president of Unifor Local 444 in Windsor. Local 444 represents just under 10,000 active members working across a range of industries, including gaming, long-term care, aerospace, energy, transportation, and of course, auto assembly and auto parts. Our local represents approximately 6,500 workers at the Fiat Chrysler Windsor assembly plant, producing vehicles like the Grand Caravan, the Voyager, and the Chrysler Pacifica. We also represent thousands more workers at nearby feeder plants right down the supply chain. I want to thank you today for the opportunity to address you with respect to Bill C-4 in the implementation of the Canada-United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. As the committee members will know, our union and our national president, Jerry Diaz, took a very active interest in NAFTA renegotiations. I can tell you, coming from Windsor, that reopening or even getting rid of NAFTA has been top of mind for workers ever since that original deal came into force back in 1994. Now, I know the terms of NAFTA stretch beyond just the auto sector. It's a deal that touches nearly every goods and service that cross our continental borders. Yet among them, the auto industry seems to grab the headlines, and for good reason. Building and developing an advanced auto industry is lucrative business. It is also a tool for significant economic development. Canada is fortunate to have invested heavily in the auto sector. Every one job in auto assembly helps generate 10 others throughout the economy. An auto assembly plant is like a center of gravity for additional manufacturing investments. Supplier parts, whether seats, doors, wheels, or other components, are intentionally located nearby to help meet production schedules and demand. This is exactly the case in Windsor, where the auto industry is still a vital cog in the local economy. This despite years of devastating closures, plant reallocations, job outsourcing, and layoffs. In 1994, NAFTA changed the terms of trade and redefined the North American supply chain. It is no surprise that automakers and parts manufacturers started relocating production to low-wage Mexico, or in some cases, the low-wage U.S. South. We used to have a $3.5 billion auto trade deficit with Mexico for cars and parts. The deficit is now nearing $30 billion. We expected this would happen. This is part of the reason Canadian auto workers have been long opposed to NAFTA. Over time and through our collective bargaining, we've managed to secure decent wages and benefits for our members doing very difficult, repetitive, and skilled labor. But all that gets undercut as Mexican factories pop up and workers paid a wage that's a fraction of what we earn. I don't know if you know this, but a new Audi assembly plant located in Mexico, producing a 40,000 luxury SUV, for instance, will pay workers around $2.25 US per hour. Canadians workers will not and should not have to compete with that. I'll tell you, there is rarely a time when Canadian auto companies fail to point out these disparities, when they're trying to lower our wages, trim our benefits, or overhaul our pensions. This is NAFTA's effect on working conditions in Canada. Now, as I said, our union put a lot of time and resources engaging in NAFTA renegotiations and working with federal officials to make meaningful changes. No one was under any assumption that tinkering with NAFTA would, by itself, undo decades of damage and neglect. But certainly, meaningful changes were made, and we recognize that. Under CUSMA, there's now a much higher threshold to determine a North American-made car as compared to NAFTA. Giving tariff preferences to car makers that build a car actually made from North American components strengthens the integrity of the deal. This is far different than the approach the Harper government took when renegotiating the TPP, wherein they committed to weaken the NAFTA threshold. Under TPP, which Unifor strongly opposed, more than half of a car didn't even have to be built in a trade zone to receive tariff preference. It's good news that under CUSMA, the trend is reversed. We think this could help locate production of Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers into Canada, as car makers attempt to meet the new rules. The CUSMA also strengthens rules of origin on key component parts over and above the original deal. For the first time, there are auto rules of origin that apply to steel and aluminum resources, requiring OEMs to purchase at least 70% of these materials in North America.
Your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you.
High labor. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going to go here. I was told I had 10 minutes. That's why I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Okay. I'm sure that once we get into the questions, you'll have an opportunity to address and add some more comments.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
So in the CUSMA text, there's provisions that give automakers some reprieve from these labor rules. Certainly R&D spending, for instance, can help them lower the 40% commitment. Labor value content can be shaved down to as low as 25% if the right conditions are met. Anyways, let's work to streamline investment supports between the federal and provincial governments like Ontario, rather than work at cross purposes. Let's commit to comprehensive oversight of new auto rules to ensure things like the labor value content are being properly applied. And let's have this industry committee undertake a detailed study on the future of auto production. Let's fully assess the gaps in Canada's supply chain and its skills needed to lead the
Mr.
electric
Cassidy,
and autonomous vehicle transaction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation
Thank
to speak.
you. And what I'll do is when we're getting close to the 30 seconds remaining, I'll lift